now to talk more about these developments is Will Rollins. He is a former federal prosecutor who has helped prosecute some of the defendants charged in the Capitol riot. He's also a Democratic candidate for Congress. Will, great to see you. So, in your view, how significant is it that prosecutors have texts and emails from Trump's legal team directly linking them to the breach of a voting system in a rural county in Georgia?
Well, it's very significant. And I think what stands out to me is not just the fact that even though they tried to develop actual evidence of fraud and couldn't, they went out and tried to invent it by breaching voter systems the day after January 6th. And so what stood out to me in reading about these new allegations is that the day after the US Capitol was assaulted, the day after more than 140 cops had been injured, the day after people like my opponent, Ken Calvert, voted against certifying the election, Trump's legal team was trying to breach voter systems and had not given up on the plan to overturn the election. So I think it's a really significant development.
Mm-hmm. And we know that the former Georgia Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan and at least one other witness, an independent journalist, have said that they will testify before the grand jury over the next few days. What, in your view, will that grand jury testimony look like? What does this say about where this case might be headed?
Well, I think this actually can tie in potentially to the federal indictment as well, because there is a count in that indictment that alleges the president conspired to deprive people of their right to vote. And what this new evidence seems to show is that that conspiracy, again, continued after January 6th and involved potentially an attempt to change the outcome of votes using an infiltration of these voter data systems. So it's really not just the Georgia case that this could relate to. It could relate also to the federal indictment. And I think we're going to have to see what this testimony ultimately reveals. But the bottom line is that I think all Americans, regardless of party, need to be extremely concerned about the future of our democracy and to believe in our republic and our institutions, because the rule of law really is on the ballot in 2024.
And sources are telling CNN that the district attorney, Fani Willis, is expected to seek more than a dozen indictments and has been eyeing conspiracy, racketeering charges against Trump and some of his allies. You actually have helped prosecute some of the defendants who were charged in the January 6th riot at the Capitol. How much of a challenge do you believe it will be for Trump's team to defend him?
Well, I think the more written evidence that you have, as we've seen in both the federal indictment and the reporting about this potential second indictment from Georgia related to similar conduct, anytime you've got that kind of evidence in writing, it becomes very difficult for defense attorneys to overcome it. So I think that, setting aside what happens again in either of these criminal cases, I think one of the larger pictures that we should be thinking about is how attacks on law enforcement, and some of the ones you just discussed at the top of your segment, really undermine the public's faith, not just in cases involving Donald Trump, but in cases involving regular federal crimes, for example, bank robbery or bombing cases. When there's a federal agent taking the stand and testifying about that kind of criminal conduct, and you've got local members of Congress telling the public that they can't trust the law enforcement professionals who are just trying to do their jobs, that has ripple effects across the country and makes all of us less safe. And so I, again, really believe that Republicans and Democrats can unite on making sure that the rule of law is protected in this next election.
Okay. And Will, the legal landscape is pretty busy right now. It's not just Trump, and his 2024 presidential race that's tangled up in these legal troubles, but President Biden's son, Hunter, is also in legal jeopardy after Attorney General Merrick Garland just appointed a special counsel after plea talks with Hunter Biden's lawyers to resolve tax and gun charges fell apart. So as someone who is also running for office in 2024, do you worry that all of these legal controversies for these two possible, or these presidential candidates could impact down ballot races like yours?
Look, I think no matter what party you belong to, Americans believe that no one is above the law, and that if you committed a crime, no matter who you're related to or what office you previously held, you should be accountable for that. And so I believe that I'm going to win a lot of Republican votes in this next election. And I was really proud to get the endorsement of the former Republican assembly leader in California, the former Republican sheriff in Riverside County, because they believe in the rule of law and they believe that attacks on law enforcement are not good for America. And so I do believe it will have an impact on down ballot races like mine, because the country wants folks who are willing to stand up and defend the Constitution of the United States.
All right, Will Rollins, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.